Welcome everybody to another Teaching Tips Live out of the Office of Digital Learning at University of Washington, Tacoma. It's our pleasure today to have Dr. Nicole Blair, who is going to talk about Hypothesis, an integrated system in Canvas for social annotation with your students, which can be used by any of you. So, Dr. Blair, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks. I just want to take a few minutes and talk about my experience with Hypothesis before we get into, we're going to actually do a demonstration with you all and sort of show you how this works. I found out about Hypothesis about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, and decided to really dig in and use it completely last quarter. And it was very, very successful. What Hypothesis does is it allows you to post like a web page or a PDF or a document of any kind, and if it's prepared the right way, students can annotate right on Canvas, and then they can comment right there on Canvas. They don't have to go out of Canvas to do anything. It's all right there. They can highlight, they can make comments, and the bonus is that they start commenting on each other's annotations. And so in evidence-based teaching, we've been talking a lot about trying to create a sense of belonging, which is so crucial, especially in an online class, because students are just, they're virtual. They're like floating in the ionosphere. And so having something like this really grounds them and pulls them into a little bit more of a space where they can see each other and appreciate each other as colleagues. And I try to spend a lot of time, trying to create a sense of community. And I've been really just, kind of frustrated with discussion board because, not everybody gets to talk to everybody. And on Hypothesis, I have 40 students in each class, and they can see everybody's annotations, and they can go in and read and learn from each other. And they end up having these really interesting conversations online, which is great. It's the teacher's dream come true. And so, in order to really facilitate that sense of belonging and then really elevate their learning to another level, I think Hypothesis is great. I would mention I went to an update on Hypothesis just the other day, and I think Chris, you might have gone to that too. And they were talking about the fact that it's not accessible to people who are sight impaired, and that is a huge thing that they're working on right now. They're trying to figure out what to do with that, and that's a downside, obviously, but otherwise, it does work really well. And I think that, in certain cases, I've had students do some Google Doc annotations, but I still think this is the gold standard right now because like I said, they don't have to ever leave Canvas to do it. And it's all right there. It's integrated in their course for them.
And this is probably a good point to say that also compared to Google Docs, one of the reasons Hypothesis is kind of the standard is because the threading of comments and the ability to use other media and things like that in annotations is non-existent on Google Docs. And so Hypothesis is a tool designed for collaborative annotation, whereas I think Google Docs is more designed for commenting.
Right. I would agree with that. And that's that social aspect that really makes Hypothesis so wonderful for students. Especially, I think, now I had students in my T-Core class last fall do a little bit of this. I was trying to learn how to use it myself, and we did a little bit of that, and they absolutely loved it. They got such a kick out of it. And they're new to college and they don't know anyone, and so it was really a way for them to gather around and get to know each other a little bit better. So I'm going to show you, can everyone see this okay?
Yep, you can make the window a little bigger if you want.
A little bigger.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
Can y'all see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this is what a page would look like. Students were, looking at a page of a play. Now this is something, this is something that I got, and I made just a copy for this purpose. And it's a play called, I can't remember the name of the play, silly me. Anyway, It's a play that they're reading in TLIT 101. And so to really facilitate their reading of it, I put it on Hypothesis, and you can see the students he makes a comment, or they make a comment here, and then you have a student making a comment back, and then you have another person commenting a couple of days later. Okay.
So the play is called Trifles.
Trifles, thank you.
Google
Thank you.
Google told me that. I did not know that. And this is actually a point that I'd like to insert here about using PDFs like this, and that is many in faculty are worried about copyright when using PDFs, especially if they are not something that's necessarily available through the library website or something like that. You have carte blanche to do that in the educational environment within the learning management system. You can use any PDF you want. You can share it and annotate it. You're not going to run into any copyright problems with that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that, Chris. This one was a PDF, and I had to run it through a program called OCR, and we'll show you what that looks like. It takes about that long to do. It's really pretty quick, unless you've got like hundreds and hundreds of pages. It's really quick. But what it does is it goes in and it prepares the document for highlighting. If it's not ready for highlighting, then students they're not going to be able to annotate. It won't work. And so you really have to run it through this program. But like I said, it goes really quickly, and we'll show you how that works. But again, you can see students are making comments, not just on the text, but with each other. The other thing I want to point out is you see this little icon up here. It looks like an eye. On the program, like I'll show you how this looks on Canvas, but if you toggle this, if you click on it, and you can toggle it back and forth, and what it does is it hides all of the annotations except yours. And if you've got 40 students who are looking at something and they're all annotating, it can get really, really crowded. And I've had students say, and so, I can't see what I'm doing. And so now on the syllabus, I'll tell them about that little icon. And then I also have an introductory video where I'll talk about it so that they know, if you don't want to see anybody's annotations while you're working on yours, toggle that little thing, and then it'll have like a little cross through it. And then when you want to see other people's, then you just click on it again. So you sort of toggle back and forth on that. Okay, and then, oops, and that's from that same play. But this is from a poem from the Poetry Foundation. So this shows you that you can have them annotate from a website. And Chris, you had said something about the website. Sometimes you have to be careful about which websites, because sometimes the content will change. Or
yeah, so two comments. One, this is a great place where that eye icon would be handy, because it looks like one big highlight, but it's actually many highlights by different students, right? So you
That's
can
right. That's exactly right.
Also, as you'll see when we're actually doing it, when you hover over a highlight in the real thing, it shows you can click on the highlight to go to the annotation. You can click on the annotation to go to the highlight. So navigation is fairly straightforward. But yeah, when you annotate a live web page, obviously web page contents can change. So annotating a site that changes drastically over a short amount of time would be a problem, because then the annotations get lost. I should say they get orphaned. You can still see them all, but you just can't figure out what they were attached to. Now, Hypothesis is fairly smart about trying to maintain it in the face of minor changes. So the Poetry Foundation made minor changes to this page. They would probably still work. But if you're going to annotate a page that might change more radically or quicker, I would print it into a PDF and share that and annotate it that way instead.
Yeah, and the other thing, the reason that I really like, well, I guess just purely from a professor point of view, I want students to know about the Poetry Foundation.
Yeah.
And this is a really good way for me to say, hey, there's tons of poems out there that you may not know about. And I've had students, like I'll suggest certain things, and boy, they just go to town, and they're like, oh man, I found this great poem. And I'm like, oh, this is great. They're just sort of taking control of their own learning and finding these things. But this one, they had to, because it's a short text, and they had 40 students, so it's really heavily annotated. But then, like I said, they can toggle that on and off, and you can tell that they're sort of having this conversation around the text. So does anybody have any questions about this so far? Anything that Chris and I can talk about before I look at the next thing?
I I have just one comment. It's or a question for myself. Really, is this is fascinating that there's that many people commenting about a shortish poem, right? Where there's not that much to highlight, and just how that looks. I mean, it's fascinating to me that there's the threaded discussions happening. Probably multiple people highlighting the same text, yet having multiple conversations through the entire poem, and I'm just curious, like, what other ways could that be done? What other ways could you have that many people speak about a poem like that, a short poem like that?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but that's...
Well, in an online class, it's typically been really hard for me to tell whether or not students are actually reading this stuff. I mean, I put it up there, and aside from giving a test every single time, at least this way I know that they're reading it, and they're blowing me away with their conversations. They're pointing out all of these little things that, geez, I mean, some of this stuff I hadn't even thought about, and I'm just like, wow, that's really that's very insightful of you, and it's even more lively than any in-class conversation I've ever had. Because you have a poem on the board, and you're like, okay, everybody, we talk about the poem, and they're like, ugh. They don't like to talk about poetry, and I don't talk about a poem, and they'll say, like, one person will say something and everybody go, yeah, I agree with that, and then no one else will talk. And so this way it's like, wow, they're all sort of saying things, and even if they're saying similar things, they're saying it differently. And so, yeah, it's just really, yeah, good point
I
though,
think,
Todd.
imagine if you weren't using Hypothesis for this and you were doing an online version. I mean, the classic way would be to put it up in a discussion board and have people reply, or maybe you could even put it up in pieces. Very much not the same thing. And, Nicole and I were talking about this. I feel like Hypothesis is a great example of something that's nearly impossible to replicate in a face-to-face classroom or without that tool. And it's because it puts the object of discussion with the discussion, right? It doesn't become scrolled down there and you can immediately respond. And I mean, I'm reading these comments and that I see here, and they're amazing. Like, these are incredible comments. And how are you gonna, you can go around in a face-to-face discussion and I can say, hey, Todd, what do you think? And what's Todd gonna say? Well, starting with on a pond at the edge of the wood and ending at never forget, I think the pond is it doesn't work that way. So this, to me, is one of the great things about social annotation, is that it enables a new kind of discussion and critical thinking, I think, or a new way to approach critical thinking.
And I just have to say that one of the things that I've seen when the very first one that they do, they're all a little bit, I don't know. But then, like, by midterm, they all sound like Cambridge Dons. It's like, well, I believe that, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, ew, it's just like they're having these really high level conversations, most of them. And I'm just like, geez, y'all,
Well, and we talked about having students potentially, like we do as Todd in this Teaching 101 class that we have, and I know, Greg, you've taken that. One of the first assignments is to annotate the syllabus, because it's a low stakes way and it reveals interesting things. And we always learn something to change about the course, actually, every time people annotate it. So that's a low stakes way to get them introduced to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Chris and I were talking about that. That's something that I'm going to change on my class. Okay, so
I'm curious, real quick, as well.
Sorry.
Have Lauren or Greg, have you used Hypothesis or any kind of tool like this before?
I have not. No.
Okay, you're going to get a chance soon.
I have not, but I can see how this just popped into my head as we were looking at this for critiquing cartography. We do that in class, but it's really hard to do it online. But I can see I'm envisioning the thread of different comments. And yes, some may say the same, but if they read ahead, they may dive deeper into the cartography or find other things to change or to appreciate. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
good.
I think there's
Good.
no reason, of course, too, that you can't keep returning to the assignment, have them build on it, so they have a
Exactly.
round doing something, they come back and they're responding and synthesizing and building on it. So that sounds like a fantastic use potentially.
In my class, they do have discussion boards, but they only do it to share assignments. Like when they do a unit assignment, then they share a discussion board. But the critical reflections are the ones that are targeted, and then they tell them in that assignment, pull on the stuff you've already read and look at the things that you've already done and sort of build on those in your reflection. And it makes it easier for them because then they don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. Oh God, I have to go blah. It's just, and then they just get to go back and go, okay, I think I'll pull that quote out and I'll build on that one, something like that.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to using it in the COIL class, Todd. It's going to be really great. Okay. So I'm going to share just a couple of reactions with you guys, what the students had. These are some pro things that they said. It has made me feel more connected to my peers and my professor as we can give each other feedback and ensures that I fully comprehend and reflect on the assigned readings rather than just skimming them. So, ding, it's like, yes, you win the lottery. That's exactly what I was hoping that you would say. But yeah, I think it just kind of goes to, you know, that whole idea of digging in, reflecting, and then having a conversation. And the other one said, I really like this application. I've never heard or used it before and think it's really cool and useful. It definitely helps me stay alert and focused during the readings, which is sometimes hard for me. Now that's something that the part about staying alert and focused really resonated with me too. And I think that, with the online, everything's online now, it's hard to read. If a text is online, it's very hard for me to read. If I can't hold it in my hands and read it, it's like I just fall asleep. And so if I put these texts online and there's nothing for them to interact with, oh my God, I feel really guilty for doing that to students for all these, oh God, I just feel terrible. So this is really a good way for them to get in there and get involved with the text a little bit more. But not, I did have some comments that were, I would call them but they're just more like problems, like problematic things. So this person said, if you comment as you go, you might not have the perspective of the story as a whole before you comment on a certain section. And Chris, you and I talked about this. What was one of the things that you said I thought was really interesting about that?
Well, I mean, I was commenting, and we both were talking about that in the normal course of reading something, I normally comment and annotate as I go. I don't normally read the whole thing and
Right.
go back. So that isn't necessarily to me a limitation, but it to me draws attention to an aspect of critical thinking that is important, which is to think about the pieces and the whole and how they work together. And so we read sequentially, but that doesn't mean when they're annotating or commenting that they just do it in one pass and they don't come back to it. And that you may actually build that into, like we were talking about a minute ago, into the assignments to, you do your initial pass, but then you come back for another assignment to focus on a particular part, theme, aspect, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, it could be that for short things, like for just maybe a couple of pages or whatever, they could read through it once and then go back and then annotate from there. And then the other thing I've noticed is that, sometimes a student, I've noticed in their comments to each other, I didn't really know what to think about this. And then I read your comment and, okay, it clicked for me. And so they're sort of learning from each other as they go too. The other one is because I'm unable to see their comments, other students' comments, it tends to make it easier to formulate an annotation answer rather than use critical thinking. So that's not really a negative, but it's just talking about the impact, the impact of, like, am I using their comments to make my comments, or or are we building off of what other people are saying? So I kind of think it goes to what are we really trying to accomplish? And what is our definition of critical thinking?
And I mean, there's an interesting parallel in, say, the Canvas discussion boards where you can set up a discussion board so that you have to post before you see everything else.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel that that's such an artificial way to learn, because generally when you're working, whether you're reading or working, nobody says, okay, you can't look at anything else before you read this. You know what I mean? It just isn't authentic to me. But I do think it's worth, again, this is another area. I don't see it as a con so much as an area that students need to become aware of how they think critically and how they approach a text or a map or a program or whatever the central object might be.
Exactly.
And you can, I remember my daughter, who literally now is like an English major, like I was, making comments in high school about how she hated the way her teachers sometimes were asking her to read and annotate books, which she said it's not fun to read anymore. And that killed me. And so I think that first comment here about seeing all the conversation visually on the side, one, they need to know they can not see any of those and just enjoy the poem or just read the thing as a whole experience, right? Like that's super, to me, really important. And then they can go back and add comments at a later time. But you also, as a teacher, can kind of encourage that, right? Like don't be overly critical of the first line in the poem right off the bat. I mean, have a full experience and then look back and learn.
That's exactly right. Okay, so do y'all have any questions before I show you how this works?
I guess I'm curious how easy it is to see who has commented.
So I think when we get to the demo where we're all in commenting on something, that'll become much clearer.
Okay.
And as Nicole has said, when she's showing you how to set up the assignment, you'll see the grading options or the options, because all this is also available in SpeedGrader to see individuals' contributions in Canvas, but you can also, as you'll see, untangle them a bit.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do this.
So we're going to start with a file that's not ready for annotation, and you're going to, in your browser, go to the doc drop tab. You can hit cancel on this big window.
Let me close that. Okay, doc drop. There it is.
There it is. Yep.
All right.
And all these links, along with other material, this video, slides, etc., will be available in the teaching tip and passport pages, so you don't need to be too worried about following every single detail here. But this service called Doc Drop has a section for OCR that will automatically convert a PDF file, which is much quicker than doing it through the library, and even faster than doing it through Acrobat Pro if you use that. So you can see she has the run OCR.
So I'm going to run OCR. Okay. And it just takes, because it's pretty short, it just takes a little bit of time. I just wanted to show you this.
Took 1/10 of 1/100th of a second.
So, all right. So I'm going to download that. And there it is.
Yep.
And then I'm going to save it to, I'm just going to save it to my desktop. Y'all get to see how terrible my desktop is. Oh my gosh, it's horrible. Okay, save. That's just going to save. Okay. Now I'm going to go to files and I'm going to do this.
I think you'll need to click the upload button.
Oh, I have to upload. Oh, go away. Oh, okay.
You can also drag the file, I think, right up into that top area where it says upload, maybe like right almost onto the button. I think you can upload there. Nah, maybe you can't. I thought you could, but maybe not. So just go ahead and click upload and you'll have to select the file.
Okay, so, oh my gosh. Okay.
There we go.
My desktop is so horrible.
Oh, I imagine many of us would say that. I certainly would. You don't want to see mine. Yep. There we go.
Okay. Y'all are so awesomely patient. Thank you. Okay, so there that is. Right?
Yep.
And then we're going to go to, where was that? Assignments. All right. And then we're going to do the PDF.
You're going to do a new assignment though. That was the one I created as an example.
Oh, you want me to do a new assignment?
Yeah,
Okay.
just plus, yeah, you can just use the plus assignment button here. You all have this class in your Canvas list. If you go to Canvas, you'll see it as TTL using Hypothesis if you want to go there so that you can join in this annotation once the assignment is set up.
So assignment name. Now you go down here and then points, da, 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 da. Okay, so you want to do external tool.
Yep.
Okay, then you're going to find right down here, you're going to go hypothesis. And then you're going to go select PDF from Canvas.
And you'll notice at this point, you could choose a web page, you could choose a JSTOR identifier, that kind of thing.
And then there's our reading right there. And I'm going to select that. And I'm going to just go with that.
Yep.
And then you have to select again.
That's key. Hit that select button the
You have to
second
select
time.
that. And then always do this, load the tool in a new tab.
Mhm.
Because sometimes you can always go in and add information like directions or anything like that to the page that you want. So I always do this, load the tool in a new tab, and then you have your due dates and everything. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Okay, so we're going to look at that.
And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to publish that assignment real quickly, Nicole, so that everybody can access it. You can go ahead and show it.
Do you see how that works? So you OCR'd it and you put the file in your Canvas page, and then you click on it and you go through those little steps. Okay. So can they access this?
Yeah. So I've gone ahead and published it. So it's in the assignment section of that course in Canvas if you want to try it out. I'm going to add it to the front page module just so it's also easier to find.
Let me show you. So if you, whoops. Okay, don't do that. All right, I'm going to go like this. Okay, so you can just highlight or you can hit annotate. Okay, so if you just highlight, it's not going to pull up an annotation. But if you do this, if you annotate, then there I am. His wife had died. This sets the scene for the kind of conversation that will take place in the story. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, then you hit post, and there it is.
Now, one thing to note here, if you're getting in and trying this for yourself, one, let me know if you have any issue getting to it. It's the one called Carver. It's the last assignment on the page, front page modules. I think it says Reading Carver. Is that if you just highlight it, you see highlights that don't have annotations that you've made. So if I highlight something, I don't add an annotation, it's just for me. Lauren won't see it. No, nobody else will see it. And then note the little red arrow up there at the top. That shows you there have been more annotations made. And so if you click it, it'll load them.
Nice.
So Lauren added some Latin there.
Looks good.
Yeah. And then you can try replying, etc. I'm going to go into that reading while we're here myself. And because one thing Todd mentioned in the comments was that this allows for more media in comments than you can like in a discussion board, or at least as easily. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here a little bit, or let's say I think I'll go here. I'm just going to make an annotation showing some options here and you'll see this appear in a moment.
Now,
for other media, things like that. So I'm going to put in let's try a YouTube video maybe.
So then if I hide that, do y'all see what just happened? So if I toggle that, then it hides the highlight.
So you only see.
It hides everything. So you can toggle back and forth.
Can you try using the red arrow and refreshing it? And because I've added an annotation as an example. So
nice. Yeah.
I just pasted in a YouTube link with somebody reading this story. So
That's great. Oh, that's the other thing. I'm really glad you brought that up. So I try to encourage students to share web pages or other kinds of media when they comment, so they don't just have to use their own words. They can go in. Maybe they know of something like this, that would be helpful to other students. Something that they've run across. It could be a film, a painting, anything, music links. Actually, we did that last quarter in my TLIT 220. Students were sharing music links. So it's just a great tool.
and if you refresh again, I think toward the bottom, I just showed putting an image in just to see some of the possibilities.
Oh, good, Todd. Yay.
Summer in Seattle. Yeah.
Yay. Summer in Seattle is here. Awesome, Greg. Yeah. See, I think you got it. It's not hard, is it? It's not hard at all. It's very easy and very intuitive. Let me ask y'all a question. When you got into this, did you have to authorize the app?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That I had to explain that to students very carefully because the first time I tried it, I didn't really explain it because I didn't think I had to. And students were obvious like, what does that mean? Oh no, something happened. So I learned the hard way. Yeah. So I just kind of give them a little paragraph about that just to give them a heads up so that it's not a problem. I had to do it. Every time I use it, I have to reauthorize it for a course. And so it's, something that you have to do. But
I just wanted to point out a couple things here too, if you don't mind, Nicole. So
please go.
If you highlight something and start creating a new annotation or hit reply to an annotation, either way.
Me?
Yep,
Okay.
that's fine. So I wanted to point out the tags feature down below.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have a super active discussion, and you may have seen this in Teaching 101, Greg, I think we were doing that when you were in it. You could set up tags. So for instance, when they're reading a story, you could have a tag say symbolism or whatever, like, any kind of theme or language use. And if you do that, if you save those tags, then you can click the tag and see all the comments related to that. So I think you have to hit return or comma for the tag to actually take.
Okay.
Yep, there we go. And so if you post that, then when you're viewing them, you can click on those tags to navigate through. So if you have a really active discussion, like say on that one poem that has highlights all over the place, you might want to break some of those down, historical references, whatever the case. Yeah, place, perfect. And then, you also have the ability in here for math, although I don't do that math stuff. So I'll leave that to other people to do formulas. But if you want to go ahead and post that one, Nicole, I'm going to add another one too, just as an example.
What am I posting?
Oh, you just have to hit that.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then I'm going to add another comment with a tag for place like you had.
Yeah, this is great. What questions do any of you have? I mean, I just want to make sure that y'all understand. Anything else? I'll do that.
Is this course that we just entered, does that have the instructions on what you just did as like a little procedure chart?
So the materials that will go with this video, like there'll be a whole teaching tip document and a page that will have the instructions like that, links to, because there are resources from Hypothesis you can share with your students about the step-by-steps, as well as for instructors. So yeah, we'll have much more supporting material there. So that they go kind of wanted to focus on the pedagogical pieces in this, but absolutely.
Yeah, and there's Hypothesis has a really nice instruction page too.
Yeah, they're great. There's also a great series of videos for teaching with Hypothesis that we'll link to. I think there are at least 35 of them now.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I guess you'll probably show us what it looks like on Canvas after the fact to see what we can see. But I'm curious about kind of like the longevity of the comments. I'm not seeing a way to export them, so I assume that you can go back to Hypothesis whenever you want. But I know that things disappear from time to time over time with Canvas. And external tools too, maybe. So I'm just wondering, are you aware of any way, like if you set up this thing, do you have any more control over it than I do from?
Are you talking about to me or Chris?
Yeah, no, to you.
To me?
Because you set up the assignment. Can you like export
You know, I
the
haven't
comments?
I haven't tried to do that because
Okay.
I have all the courses. I don't ever my Canvas homepage is, oh my gosh, I have every course I've ever taught and it's still there. I'm just like, I never like, what do you call them? Archive them. I never do. It's always there. They're always there. So I can go back and look at them and they're still there from last quarter and they're still there from fall. So I just imagine that they're there until Canvas goes away. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any way to export. They should last as long as the Canvas course does, but as you said, there can be vagaries in that potentially. That is one of the potential drawbacks of using this tool within the Canvas system, is that since they're not in the open system where you can access them, and I'm not aware of a way to export them. So you are kind of at the mercy of the system remaining.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true.
One thing you could show though, Nicole, if you want, is if you go back into into Canvas and show the speed grader view.
Oh yes, that's what I was going to talk about. So the no, that's not it. No. Sorry. Go
No,
back.
I think if you just go to assignments again, and then you can use the,
Okay, now what?
yeah,
Go to
that
the
one.
assignment.
Because usually you'd go through the grade book before it, but since we don't have much, and then I think you can just use the, yeah, exactly, and go to the speed grader.
Speed grader, yay. Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. So the grading thing, people ask you, how do you grade this? Generally, I mean, I kind of decide, I mean, you could just give them 1 point apiece for every reading. I choose to give them 10 points to make it a little bit more, give them a little bit more incentive, but it really doesn't matter how many points you give. And I don't generally give them, like, I don't count off points, you know, for like if I think, oh, that's not a very quality thing, that, you know, the whole idea is to encourage them to read. And so if they are giving it a good effort and they're reading and they're making comments at least on every other page of a reading, and they're making really substantive comments, and if they're involved in it, they get 10 points. You know, it's the idea is they're reading and they're getting that content and they're participating in the reading. If somebody is just making like 1 or 2 word comments, like, oh, that's great, or oh, I don't know, or, you know, I mean, if they're not really, you know what I'm trying to say, y'all, if they're not really into it, then, you know, that person and that student and I might have a conversation about that. And I would just say, but in the instructions for the assignment, I'm really clear about what I expect. So, you know, if set it up, the annotations, you have to say something, and there's like maybe 3 or 4 categories of the types of things that I'm looking for. So like in the literature class, I want to see something about themes. You know, if you're reading a short story, what themes are you noticing? What are you noticing about character development? What are you noticing about, you know, symbolism or figurative language and those kinds of things? So you can set the parameters, you know, for yourself and your class. What do you want them to get out of that? And then if they're doing that, then it's like, yeah, good, you know, keep going, keep doing that. And I give them the points for that. But if they're just, you know, if they're obviously not, you know, before I would go in and count off, I would just make a comment to the student in their comment section, not on the annotation, but in the comments, the private comment section. I might say, well, you know, next time, why don't you think about digging down a little bit more, you know, give me a little bit more. Does that make sense? So it's kind of the idea is to incentivize them to read.
And one thing I like about what's happening in this view is that it's much like in some ways a Canvas discussion board when you're speed grading, right? So you have the discussion on one side, private comments on the other. But in this case, it's much easier. If she wanted to reply to that comment she sees there, she can just reply right there. You don't have the rigmarole of trying to get the right thread in the discussion board and stuff, which I just find very frustrating with Canvas. So she could click the little reply on your annotation and say, hey, I think you want the genitive case for your pseudo Latin here or whatever. And it would just, or she has the private comments on the right. And then you also still over there, like Nicole, if you click the show all button, for example, or you could actually, you can show one more in the conversation down below, or you can show all to just open the whole conversation.
Show all. Yeah.
Which again, I find much more conducive to a kind of a holistic approach to discussion, because I'm always wanting to refer things back and forth, you know, oh, look what Lauren said up here. Look what Greg said here. And I can easily get back and forth between those, all of those comments in a way that just is more fluid than the discussion board for me.
Can I also just say, I mean, I know we're going to run out of time here in a minute. I just want to say how wonderful it is as a teacher to see students teaching each other. It's just, you know, they're learning from each other, and it's so thrilling that they're not just sitting in these little, you know, they're private little worlds, and they're not learning from each other, and they're sort of, you know, it's like, I feel like we're a group, and I'm learning from them, they're learning from me, they're learning from each other. You know, it's we're in this together, rather than it's all coming from the teacher to the student and they're not having any interaction at all. That's what I like, and I've seen a lot of evidence of that. And it does put, you know, students who aren't used to actually having to be accountable for the reading like this. I mean, at first it's a little bit, God, you know, got to read, I have to read all this, 20 pages, you know. But I think once they get into it, I think that they really appreciate it, because it helps them with their final projects or with their unit assignments, or, you know, any other assignments. It really helps them out. So.
I agree, and it's happening to me right now with us, right? Like I was just, Lauren, I just discovered that you were asking about maybe keeping some of this in some fashion, right? It'll stay on Canvas for many years, you know, 5 or whatever UW's got. But in the top center of your screen, there are 3 little icons under the purple bar. The print icon. If you click the print, it actually prints the page with the comments on it, or it creates a PDF with. We can't see it right here, but you can do it on your screen. It prints. It doesn't look. At least mine didn't look perfect, but it had all the comments and the text.
Well, there you go.
So I just learned that. So thank you.
I just learned that.
Good question.
I just learned that from you. That's awesome.
Another thing I just discovered too, while we're doing the discovery thing, is I had never used this function. I've been using Hypothesis forever, but if you go to the top right of the Hypothesis window next to the little person, there's a little arrow, kind of keep going way to the right. No, way there, right to the right of that person. A little bit, 3 to the, click that little arrow, and there's a notebook option.
Look at that.
And if you open that, it's interesting. I'd never seen this before, but this would be a way to save and print comments, because if you show all comments and open the notebook, you see them all. So you can easily export that to PDF or save it or whatever.
See, you guys, we're already learning together.
Yep. Someone needs to annotate. Todd, we need to annotate these things.
This is
and then
great.
You can use a little X to close the notebook back up if you want. So
and I'm sharing all of this with my students. I'm going to make a little video and send it out to them and tell them about this, because you know, we get so involved in doing the annotations, right? We missed all the little gifts that we have. And this one you can download, you can upload open file, you can print. This is great. Okay, awesome.
Would you mind maybe updating this assignment with like an example of the instructions that you would give your students for how to annotate something? I mean, the material that I'm going to have them do is going to be significantly different, so I'm not sure how applicable it would be, but I still would like to see an example. I think that might be helpful.
Sure. So you're talking about like, you know, students, this is what you're expected to do, and these are the things that you should be looking for, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Nicole, would you mind stopping screen sharing for a moment, and I will share
So-
something based on Lauren's question. I wanted to bring this up anyway. Let me pull this up. Share. So on the digital learning site, let me get rid of that sidebar. There is a Passport to Teaching Excellence page. And this Passport page is where all of these session materials go. Video, recording, everything. Every page, every session you see will have a page here. And I'm just pointing this out because, Lauren, to your question, when I'm done after this session, of course, I couldn't create it before the session because we needed to have it and I wanted to questions and things like that. But once I've done that, I will edit this video and I will put up something that looks like this, where you have the video and the slides and lots of accompanying information, links, text, explanations for students, things like that. So hopefully with this, you'll be pretty equipped to prepare yourself and your students should you choose to use Hypothesis. And then of course, Todd, Nicole, I'm sure are open to questions. So that's every session will have this kind of material going with it. In fact, the session that you attended last time, I think you received a note in the mail about.
Yeah, I
about
just
those materials. So
saw
we'll do
that.
the same thing here. Yeah.
Great.
And anywhere people see this, I always say this, anywhere people are watching this video, whether it's YouTube or embedded somewhere else, all that accompanying material will be there because it is both there for faculty development, professional development purposes, but also potentially if you want to earn Passport stamps. So, which Nicole said she's already going to earn every single one of them. So
Yes.
we'll have
I think it would be fun. And then you could be you could collaborate with all the other people who have earned their things and keep this going. This is great.
I also wanted to point out with Hypothesis in particular that Hypothesis does exist outside of Canvas. And in the past, I've never used it inside Canvas when I'm teaching because I've never taught with Canvas available. And we didn't have the integration where I was teaching. And so you can use the tools. So it's obviously a little bit messier because it's not integrated into the gradebook and things. But the positive is that you're annotating out in the open so the world can see it. So it's like there's a public performance thing, comments to other people, which can be valuable. And also, I think Nicole and I were talking about this, but it also came up in the last session with Utah, where learning to annotate for yourself, not necessarily in a particular class, but in your life, can be a really valuable learning skill. So, I may take Nicole's class and be using Hypothesis on particular selections, but when I'm out there in the world doing my thing and I'm reading a poem or I'm reading a book, or I do this all the time actually for work, for reals, I highlight and annotate and use Hypothesis all the time. It's just a plugin for your browser that you can also use separately from all of this other stuff. It looks exactly the same. It just doesn't happen inside the Canvas window.
Yeah, I noticed one of the course materials in the examples was about how to do annotation effectively. And I think I'll download that. Take a look.
There you go. And annotate it.
Right.
Sounds good.
So it is 1:25, so we will be sewing up. I will stick around for the duration if anybody has further questions and can't stay. But I did just want to make a note to come to the digital learning site if you want to get these materials and any other Teaching Tips live sessions for future viewers. And for the rest of you, if you have any questions or comments, throw them out there.
I really appreciate you all showing up. This
Absolutely.
is great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
for sharing.
You. This is great.
Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for attending. And I hope to see you at more of these. And I know that I am always available to answer questions about Hypothesis and its use. I'm sure Nicole would be happy to answer questions as well.
Yeah.
I think my experience so far is everybody who actually chooses to use it and has a use for it is pretty excited about it and is happy to spread the word. So let me know if there's any way that I can help in the future with it.
All right, great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone.